Alrighty guys, in this video I'm going to be explaining the Bowtie model. So what does that do to your business, your revenue factor blueprint? So basically what we're doing here with the Bowtie is we are eliminating the traditional sales funnel. And this is exactly what we've done to scale VShred from 0 to 150 million in 3 years with a super lean operation that is highly profitable, because we understand that none of the acquisition and retention departments should be leaving a silo. And that's exactly what happens with your current sales funnel. The current sales funnel, it's one directional, meaning the prospect, leads, opportunities, deals, and revenues, they just happen in separate stages. So marketing is running paid ads, and the only thing that marketing cares about is the marketing metrics. And whenever they generate calls that are cheap, they think that's a win, and they complain if the sales team is not generating enough sales, and the sales team complains if marketing is sending bad leads. So that is one of the issues that we typically face here. And then once the sales team makes a sale, the community managers, the onboarding managers, etc., they complain that the sales team didn't sell the customer correctly. It promised different things, and it's going to make the customer upset. So there's a whole sequence of frustrations that happens when you use the one directional funnel, which is what most people do. And basically what most people do as well is you have start with like a mid ticket or like 2,500, 3,000, then you upsell them into a mastermind, and that's it, right? Like your only goal is to continuously sell them more information without necessarily selling something that would be an implementation or a service that would allow you to massively scale your profits and make sure that you don't necessarily need to be starting from zero every year, because you have these customers that you're continuously giving impact. And if you don't churn them, your whole enterprise value of your business is just going to continuously grow. So that's what everyone else is doing, and why at this day and age, it's not working as well as it used to, because most businesses today are using a 100-year-old map called the sales funnel. And here's what's wrong with it. The marketing lives in its own world. They generate leads, but don't know what happens after, right? Obviously, there's the assumption that they know, where it's like, hey, this pocket of customers is better, X, Y, and Z. But in reality, it's like they only care about generating new ads. They don't necessarily understand how does that impact the sales performance. They don't necessarily understand the lead scoring that goes through the funnel. And that creates a lot of issues, because when we're sending data back to Hyros or when we're sending data back to Facebook, if we don't have the funnel properly set up, we're going to just send a lot of conversions. But as you know, the majority of people that goes through your funnel, it's not super qualified. And if you're sending the majority of your conversions that it's not qualified, you're basically training your pixel to find you not really good leads. And then the sales calls are wasted. So what I mean by that, it's all valuable conversion data. It's gone forever. People, they use the Fathom, they use the Fireflies, but they are not leveraging that information in a way where it's sending back to the CRM in a format that it's useful. And you can send the meeting summaries, that's totally fine, but you can't stop there. It's very important, and we're gonna go over like the implementation of this, but it's very important that you can score your calls and you can add these calls to our live tracking database, not just send a Slack message like most people do. Because as you're collecting the marketing information from the customer, the sales call information, the sales numbers, meaning the close rate, average order value, cash collected, and you're putting all of this into one database, and we're using Metabase to unify this information, you're going to be able to break down the most common objections for this customer. What is the conversion rate per this segment of lead, and what are these segments of leads saying during the calls, and how can I create lead magnets to convert these leads? So it's just breaking the silos, right? And then currently the sales calls are completely wasted. And then customer support obviously is just super disconnected. People, the way they close the deals in the CRM is just posting a Slack message, but there's no, for the majority of times, like they're updating an end of day report with like, hey, I took 5 calls, I had 8 booked on my calendar, and I offered like 3 people and I closed the deal. That's great, but those are just numbers in a spreadsheet. They don't really tell exactly what we're looking for, which is the data behind the numbers. And for a customer success standpoint, if all they see is like, oh, there's a new customer, customer, how can they provide personalized information and make your whole onboarding experience better, right? They can't, right? It's just going to be a standardized cookie cutter canned onboarding experience. And for the most part, if the sales calls are not recorded and put it in the CRM for the deals to be closed, there's no onboarding notes. What's going to happen is the customer will say things that were said on the calls, and the onboarding supervisor is going to be with a poker face because he can't really understand and access that information. And then the customer success is going to complain with sales because they didn't properly sell the customer, right? I've seen this pattern over and over and over again. And that's exactly what we're fixing here. And then the data is scattered everywhere. There's a spreadsheet for community management. There's a spreadsheet for sales. There's a spreadsheet for setters. There's a spreadsheet for marketing. There's a spreadsheet for operations. It's like a mess. So different spreadsheets, different systems, no real insights because you don't have a database. And then the biggest problem, the funnel stops at the sale. Whenever that happens, I mean, you already acquired the customer. You might as well just try to sell them again, right? Not just by trying to give them more information like most people do with a mastermind, but actually trying to provide a service that it's reoccurring and would drastically improve the LTV of your customer and also the enterprise value of your business. Because one of the things about info products, coaches, consultants is that the key player risk is pretty high. Even with VShred, like if Vince suffers an accident, like it's very hard to deal with this situation. So by offering these services as cross-sells after the customer purchased your initial program, you're going to be able to not just start, every month from zero and hunting for a lion every month because you already have this recurring system. So the real cost of using yesterday tools is pretty simple. So here's a breakdown of the traditional funnel versus the Bowtie, and the numbers don't lie, right? Like just an example here, traditional funnel for customer acquisition is 30% higher. The average customer lifetime is 75% lower. The customer lifetime value is 76% lower. The monthly churn rate is 80% lower, 80% higher, and the expansion revenue it's 80% less. So when you combine all of these, right, and it goes to show that understanding these metrics and how they affect the bottom line collectively and also separately shows how like you can't just be focusing on close rates. You can't just be focusing on average order value. You can't just be focusing on CPM. You have to look at the collective to understand how does that impact your economics and what that means for $1 million business or bigger than that. If you're using traditional funnels, you spend like 2,500,000, share $1 million. You need 500 customers per year, 75% customers. You probably like don't even resell them. So you're just selling like for one package or two maximum. And for the most part, you're always relying on new customers to come through. And then using the Bowtie, you can spend up to 100,000. You can generate less customers. You can make more profits and you can make net profit because you're trying to get a recurring impact that it's going to reduce your churn rate, that it's going to improve your marketing and just improve the overall experience of your business. And then this is just an overview of the Bowtie. So basically when we compare, right, the traditional funnel, that's how it works. It just stops here at the decision, right? And then here with the Bowtie, there's the acquisition and there's the retention and expansion. And basically what we're doing here in terms of traditional funnel versus Bowtie is that the traditional funnel stops at the sale where the Bowtie continues through the customer lifetime. The traditional funnel focuses on acquisition and the Bowtie balances acquisition and expansion. The traditional funnel department works in silos and all teams share one system. That is very important. The one system, especially for numbers, it's super, super key here. And then traditional funnel, the data got lost because it's a bunch of spreadsheets, end of day reports. They rely on the closers to submit. Your data is going to be inaccurate. The closers are not going to submit the data. Pretty sure, as you scale to 100 people, imagine like we're managing 100, 200 reps per month. If you're relying on them submitting the end of day reports, I'm not even going to entertain this idea because I know it's going to be chaotic. And then the Bowtie model, every interaction feeds the AI, and every interaction, for the most part, we're going to be understanding how to track them in a sense of volume metrics, the time metrics, and all of that. And we're going to be covering this here as well. So the traditional funnel is a one-time transactional mindset, and then the Bowtie is a partnership mindset. So the Bowtie has two sides. The left side, the promise, where you attract and convert customers, and the right side, the delivery, where you deliver results and grow revenue. And the magic happens in the middle, where we call the mutual commit instead of close ones, because this changes everything, right? And in the three goals of your revenue factory, it's for the most part, you have the production lines here. So you have people that work in these departments, but the goal, deliver a quality product that produces revenue growth in a cost efficient way. And you have the marketing that does its thing, the sales, social media, and all that stuff that it's within the marketing, and the CX. And then for every department, every little production line, you generate insights, right? of those insights, they get siloed. But if you want to be able to increase your production, increase your efficiency, and increase your quality, you need to be able to get all those production line silos. So the marketing, the sales, and the customer support. And you need to break these silos over here, because currently, for the most part, that's where it lives, right? And with the C2C approach, we're trying to break this by automating the data tracking, putting the information, let's say, as you can see here, in vector databases, so we can analyze the information here. So this is like for documents, this is for sales calls. This is for sales calls where we're scoring the calls. This is for like meetings as a whole, like coaching calls and stuff like that. So you can silo them in your database and you can query to get meaningful information there. And then every successful business needs to achieve three things. So the goal one is scalability. In the traditional way, it's like a linear format, right? Where it's like, hey, we're doing 1 million right now and you want to do 10. I mean, if I 10x my pipeline, I'm going to be able to get to 10 million, where it's not the case. It's not how it happens. And then the Bowtie way is where you're going to be focusing on increasing your pipeline, but you're also going to be focusing to make a recurring impact to your customers so you can expand the amount of money that you make from them, right? The goal two is sustainability, where you're trying to lower your costs. The traditional way, you spend more on ads and get more customers. The Bowtie way, you try to grow your existing customers to cut costs instead of trying to find new ones. So that is one thing that you have to think about as much as building your funnels, right? Because this is key. This is very important. And then the goal three is durability. The traditional way, you sell the promises, and once you onboard the person, you just do an onboarding call, and then you kind of hope for the best. And the Bowtie way, you look for the activation points throughout your discovery, throughout your onboarding, and you make sure the customer can see them and relate to the benefit of achieving those points. And then here's the blueprint of the data-driven operating system, where we have the acquisition and the retention. And then you can see that for the acquisition portion, we've got these VMs, which are volume metrics. So number of leads, number of qualified opportunities, numbers of book calls, calls taken, sales. And then the VMs on the retention and expansion side, they are measured in money. So here's going to be the total number of activities, total number of actions. And then here it's going to be the total monetary outcomes, right? The total number of sales that translated to cash collected, the total number of refunds that translating to the refunded cash. So you can get all of your net income. You can get everything that comes from your sales process as well, like the average order value and things along those lines. So the three types of metrics are the volume metrics, conversion metrics, and time metrics. So basically, here's like a complete overview where we've got the acquisition metrics. So you can see that we have the stages of the funnel, and then we have the volume metrics, where it's like the total number of things. So for example, here we've got the volume metrics, how many at each stage. So number of visitors, number of leads, number of customers, and number like in cash. The conversion metrics, so how effective a stage is. So we've got 10% of leads become customers. So it's like lead conversion rate. But you can see that each of these steps have a conversion rate. So it's like opt-in rate, application rate, the number of qualified applications, qualified application rate, if you want to track that as well, the booking rate, the show up rate, the no-show, the cancellation, the close rate, the booking conversion rate of like the booking to sale conversion rate as well. So all of these, there are the conversion metrics that are in between these funnels, these steps. And then the time metrics, it's also very important. So you understand what's your total sales velocity, right? So time averages. So tell me how fast things move. So like average sales cycle is 14 days. Because imagine if you know all of these and it's all tracked in your database, and then you want to scale, you're doing 200K a month, 300K a month, and you want to scale to like $1 million a month. And you know all of these metrics. And you know that as you're scaling, your ad costs are going to go up. So you can go to ChatGPT, you can put all your metrics, you can make a plan to scaling, taking into account that your CPM may grow 10 to 20%, and then understand which of these conversion metrics you can improve. Like if you're not doing split tests on your pages, if you're not testing sending a freebie for the person to show up for the call, if you're not analyzing your calls properly with the AI scoring, like all those small increments. So it's like, I want to get to $1 million a month. I know that this is going to be more expensive to bring customers, but I also know that I can work throughout the whole funnel to improve my conversion metrics. I can do these revenue sprints to improve this whole operation, so that if I know that my sales cycle is 14 days, for example, and I want to get to $1 million a month, I am going to be in a gap, in a limbo where I'm spending more on ads, and I may not necessarily be making as much money, but you know, based on the metrics that you mapped out and you understand that eventually you may or may not reach your goal. But the fact that you track this would allow you to understand if you're going to reach your goal or not, and why. That's the most important thing. So why this changes everything, why tracking like this way, which to be honest, like I think majority of people think they do this, but they're not just put it in a database. And it's just so important for us to put this information in a database, regardless if it's going to be a little bit more technical, because otherwise you're not going to be able to scale. Imagine if I was using like a Google Sheets tracker and we're doing 5-6 million a month. Like, it's impossible. How am I going to add 20 tabs? Am I going to add 150 tabs per sales rep? The sheet's going to break and I'm not going to be able to understand the performance properly, right? So all these people selling sales operating systems, this is great, but it's like, it's as if you upgrade from a normal bike to an e-bike and you still want to drive, you still want to ride like 100 miles. Like, why can't you just upgrade from a bike to a car? And you know that it can ride not only 100 miles, but 1,000,000 miles. And that's the thing. That's the reality that we're facing here right now. So why this changes everything is because now marketing, sales, and customer success all speak the same language. They can see exactly where it improved. Instead of saying increase sales, you can say improve the CR, the conversion rate 6, onboarding by 5%, and increase lifetime value by 15%. And the ROI breakdown, where your money really goes, it's looking at 100 customers over 2 years, right? You can see that we generated the traditional sales funnel, we generated the 1,000 leads, 100 customers we want. Like, it's very optimistic. Customers after 6 months, customers after 12 months, customers after 24 months. So if you're doing renewals, if you're not even doing renewals, like, you're not even going to get this. You're just going to get like, I'm going to get these customers here and then I'm going to upsell them into a mastermind, and that's it. If you're not doing this, even, it's going to be very hard to really grow in the marketplace. But if you just want to start with the Bowtie, you can generate these 1,000 customers. You can win this 100 customers, a very optimistic scenario. And you try to map out all of your activation points so that customers after 6 months are at 85, 12 months, 12. And then that way, like, you just try to squeeze in as much money out of these people as possible, but in a way that it's like beneficial to them, obviously, because that way, like, you just make so much more money, right? And that's what we want. That's what we want. Even if you're just doing this honestly and you just start implementing this information here through the data processes that we're going to be covering, the RAG database that we're going to be setting it up, you're already going to see a massive difference. Because how we can make this work is just essentially, we're just trying to break the silos to generate insights across the whole operations and create a synergetic architecture where people, for the most part, we know that data, it's king, right? But they think that just copying and pasting the CPM, the click-through rate, and X, Y, and Z into a sheet, it's actually data. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? Like, you can have this information and it can be beneficial for you, but what you really need is to make sure that you're breaking these silos here. So what I mean by that, while other people are wasting valuable data, here's what we're going to build with your revenue factory: marketing and sales integration. So what most people do is marketing hands off the leads and forgets about them. They complain that the sales team isn't closed. And what we do is every marketing interaction feeds our CRM and score the leads. So we're routing the best leads to the best closers and hyper-personalizing follow-ups to prospects, so we stand out in the marketplace. And the result of this is that you're going to close at a much higher rate for specific leads and specific closers. And you're also going to generate more opportunities. And then the sales call intelligence. So what most people do, if they're even doing this, is like the sales call happens, the notes get lost, or just simple summaries are added to the CRM. So what we do is we score every sales call through NAN. We automatically link customer insights to the profiles. We feed to a vector database that marketing can leverage for funnel assets and create lead magnets as well as ad scripts. And then the sales calls get summarized and passed to CX for hyper-personalized onboarding, making the whole customer experience super seamless. So we're generating these calls here, but we're not just scoring them. We're also sending like a good amount of information about the call, if the call was closed, etc., to this database. So as we're creating the records in the database for the closers, we're going to be able to see like their sales performance, close rate wise, volume metrics, etc. We're also going to be able to break down, okay, from the calls that he didn't close, what are the steps steps in the calls that are not converting as great. And if you're sending all of this with the call recordings, the recording link for Fathom and stuff like that, you can just easily scrape a list of calls that your closer failed on a specific objection with the transcripts, and you can put it in the vector database and you can immediately work with them in order to improve this, right? And then also your closer, it's going to be receiving the notification of the call and how did it go, what they need to do to get better. And then the playbook, it's also being used by the agent to make sure that the call is being properly assessed based on the information that you already put it in your knowledge base. So onboarding preparations, what other people do is the customer success start blind or from a standard script. And what we do is the onboarding calls are preloaded with all the sales and marketing promises. So basically we look at the customer form submissions, we look at the sales recording, and then we look at our onboarding script. And then we create a personalized approach for this customer where it's like, we know what we're offering. We know what this customer put it in his form. We know what he said on the call. And then in the onboarding call, we're reselling them on the idea that they made a good choice, right? And then the coaching call, content production. This is just another example where it's like coaching calls, they happen and they're just stored in a Zoom folder and inside a community, right? And then what we do, it's every coaching call can become a part of a vector database. So we're inserting the calls in the vector database, we're generating ideas, you're generating content insights, and then you're either sending this to the marketing team or you're just putting a vector database for the coaching calls where that your customers can access and ask questions. And the results is that you have higher expansion and retention. So it's mostly focusing on one system, not 10, right? So we're just using few tech tools to integrate everything. And instead of using like, I don't have anything against Salesforce, HubSpot, or anything like that, but I just think like for the price they offer, there's not a good ROI. Like for us, we would be highly unprofitable if we were using HubSpot and Salesforce to manage our sales team because it's just a lot of people. And with HubSpot, you can just pretty much, you use like good reporting there, but it still requires like a lot of third-party tools to really make it work. Same for Salesforce. They're amazing tools. Like if you are selling super high ticket products, like you're selling 50K, 30K, you know, enterprise deals, there are like millions of dollars. I think it's definitely worth it. But for us, like we're just going to be sticking with Go High Level in our white label CRM, which is Go High Level as well, that you can use already as part of your subscription. So you can eliminate your Go High Level subscription and just use ours. And basically we're just going to start doing everything through, for the most part, Go High Level, N8N, Supabase, and Metabase. And we're going to be covering the tech setup in the next few modules. So for the V-Shred case study, how I went from 0 to 150 million in 3 years using the Bowtie, here's how it happens. We apply the Bowtie model to implement unified data platform, connecting marketing, sales, and customer success, optimizing the onboarding, reducing refund rates, optimizing the sales process because we're capturing the calls, scoring them, and also routing the new closers to leads that we weren't even taking calls before because we were unqualifying them. And then the year two, we start really leveraging the AI scoring to create better playbooks, better onboarding for the sales reps, better onboarding for the setters. And then we automated the onboarding based on the promises made during the call. We're also reviewing the call to make sure there's any compliance violations, which is something that like most people don't do, but in our case was very, very important because it's a very massive operations. And then the year three, we just fully implemented the Bowtie. A lot of the revenue came from expansions as well. And then we hit the 150 million and we're on pace to do another 60 million this year. So in terms of the foundation that you need, we're going to be implementing the Bowtie model in a way that's super, super profitable for you because most of the tools are going to be open source and self-hosted. So we're going to build a unified data platform. We're going to be tracking all of the information volume wise. So we're going to be sending all the conversion events to this platform. And then when we send these conversion events to the platform, we can do the time metrics, you can do the conversion metrics and everything else. And then the process documentation, I'm going to be sharing the playbooks that we've used. Obviously, this is already the information that we've used. The metric tracking where we're going to be setting it up this. We reduced, like personally, $50,000 a year in reporting with this setup here. We were using Plecto before. And then with the setup that I'm going to be showing you, it's highly, highly scalable. If you have a sales agency, you can use for all of your clients. And it costs like really less than $500 a month. It's probably $100, $200, $300. So it's super, super profitable. And then the team alignment, everyone speaks the same language, shared goals, and the investment. Honestly, it's like if each person of your team watches through this program, let them just watch this so they understand what they're building, like in terms of the Bowtie. And then why is this the future? The companies using these traditional funnels are like factories using assembly lines from the 1920s. So this is like the traditional sales funnel, they might still work. They can't compete with modern automation. The Bowtie model plus AI integrations is how you build a business that scales without you being the bottleneck, reduces the cost per customer, creates customers who stay for years and not months. And then overall, like, that's just really the two options. Both of them would work. I'm not here trying to give you prescriptions. I'm just here to share exactly how we done and how we do up to this day to scale multiple sales operations in a way that's very different, because most sales trainers, they don't know this. So you can stay with the traditional funnel where you keep losing a lot of your customers. You keep focusing on, every month's a new month where you're starting from zero. You keep spending a lot of money on ads. Your team keeps complaining of one another and you feel like you have to babysit people around. You keep wasting customer data. Or you can switch to the Bowtie where you can keep 70% of your customers. You can spend a lot less on ads to make a lot more money. You can unite your teams and you can turn every interaction into intelligence. The math is simple, right? And we use the Bowtie on VShred and it's pretty much like validated. So you can literally implement in your business. And the question isn't whether you should switch. It's how much money you're willing to lose before you do. So take that and let's build this together. I'm excited for you. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.